Medical professionals of Reddit. What's the funniest thing a patient has said under anesthesia? I'm a consultant anesthetist UK and there are loads. Often declarations of love from the patient as the drugs are kicking in. My all-time favorite is a 40-something guy a few years ago. He needed a testicle removing for cancer. He'd never had an anesthetic before and was super nervous, to the point of barely saying anything to anyone. As the drugs started to kick in, we realized someone was quietly singing. It was the patient. Hitler has only got one ball. Goering has two but very small. Himmler is rather similar, but poor old Goebbels has no balls at all. Was recovering a patient after surgery who got ketamine, which has a known side effect of making you super emotional. When she woke up she started catcalling me, telling me how attractive I was. Then she got worked up because she was thirsty, so I told her I could get her iced chips. As I am getting her iced chips she starts to go, I hate to see you leave but I love to see you go. As I disappear to get her some iced chips she starts crying real tears that she scared me off and how sorry she was. I'm preparing to salsa dance. Stand back everybody. There's nothing you can do to stop me. Somebody stop me. Narrator. Nobody stopped her. The most memorable funny one was a guy who sat bolt upright, mime rolling a cigarette and tucked it behind his ear, saving it for Ron when I asked what he was doing. Anesthesia can be a wild trip. The kids will always scream when they wake up. I woke up from my hysterectomy screaming in pain and begging them to make it stop. The nurse was freaked out. She was desperately trying to get meds into my IV as fast as she could, only for me to have a hives response all over my face. I must be a kid at heart, lol. Poor you and poor nurse. That is a very important comma placement. This woman undergoing C-section under spinal anesthesia plus ketamine said, "Show my baby first" to my brother-in-law. He deserves to see her first. I sometimes wonder what happened to her marriage after that. Oh no. Anyway, here's Wonderwall. Because maybe had a patient come into recovery after surgery. She farted so long and loud the entire 20-bed unit heard her. Then she said I was trying to clear my throat. Excuse me. And I want a vanilla latte. I got a headache. As medical professionals, we had to hold in the laughter, but that didn't stop patients from turning into hyenas. I gave a kid methoxyflurane after he broke his arm. When we got to the hospital he went into the pediatric section of the ED and there were stickers on the wall of Sesame Street characters. He started talking about this unicorn on the wall. There wasn't one. And how it was trying to be friends with Elmo, but Elmo didn't want to be friends with him. His mum and I had a chuckle and I had to pry the whistle out of his hands. Now tell us about the whistle. The whistle, which is green in my country, hence why the drug commonly known as the green whistle here, has a wick down the bottom. So we pour the methoxy into it and you inhale the drug. Not a medical professional, but my mom was coming out from under anesthesia after a procedure a few years ago and I was trying to help her. She puckered her lips, so I picked up her water cup and asked if she wanted some. She turned her face toward me and said, "Do I look like an airplane?" The nurses and I completely lost it. I still tease her about it sometimes. Well, some people do wanna turn into airplanes. What a weird fetish. Oh number, you reminded me of Dark Things. That I look like a guy who worked for Bon Jovi. Ooh, he's halfway there, wooho. A lemon and a pear. I can't unhear this now. Like that triangle in Yeah by Usher. In the early days of my surgical training, there was a day that I was assigned to a colonoscopy list. Standard practice is to pre-medicate patients in the anesthetic bay if required, particularly if they are a bit anxious about the procedure. I was clerking one of the patients in the anesthetic bay, going through consent and the usual pre-op routine, when I noticed that she was giving me these weird long glances and that her eyes would dart away every time I tried to make eye contact with her. She was also extremely fidgety and was stammering a lot in her responses to my questions. I kind of shrugged it off as preoperative nervousness and let the anesthetist do his business. Fast forward 10 minutes and I'm standing behind her. She curled up into the fetal position with her ass hanging out and I, colonoscope in hand. As the propofol starts rushing through her veins, she turns right around, grips my forearm and stares up at me with a dreamy look on her face and goes, "You know what, Doc? I bet you kill it with the ladies." A moment later she was asleep and I was checking her colon for polyps. A moment later she was asleep and I was checking her colon for polyps. With the colonoscope. I just had a bowel resection and was hopped up on morphine. My divorced parents hadn't sat in a room that long together in forever. My sister, uncomfortably quiet between them, tells me my junk is hanging out of my hospital gown and I say, "If my balls are hanging out, that makes this a ball gown." Really helped with the tension. Haha, this is one of the funniest in the thread for me. I had double jaw surgery to correct my underbite. I took sign language in college. They typically don't wire your jaw shut anymore. They just use strong rubber bands. But you can still talk. I knew I'd be able to talk. Yet when I woke up from the surgery, apparently I kept trying to sign. The nurses were like, "UHH, we don't know sign language, honey." Based on how little I remember from college, I'm certain it wasn't even good sign language. Am I in hell? Breaking through on anesthesia tricky. This is the bad place. Jason figured it out. Oh, that hurt. That stings a little. My dad, Italian, was waking up from anesthesia and kept looking at his Asian nurse and saying he was so glad his daughter was with him, and that he loved his daughter. The nurses were confused, so they went out into the waiting to check for his daughter. I was the only one in the waiting area, and when they saw me and started hysterically laughing. I am Korean by birth, but what, adopted by my lovely Italian family. Oh, this is cute. He was probably so relieved to wake up and see you. Or not adopted but in the foster care system waiting. I love this story. Dislocated my shoulder in a way that my arm ended up stuck up over my head. Apparently, while all hopped up on Demerol, I was laughing hysterically while the doctor was standing on the table gurney wrestling with my arm to get it back into the socket. I don't remember a thing. Lucky you. When I was 11, the doc wrestled with my broken shin and they gave me nothing but paracetamol. Most of those fuckers must be sadists. I mean, why else would they choose a job like this? Orthopedic surgeons are a blend of power lifters and doctors. You'll never see a small, weedy ortho. Not anesthesia but delirium. Introduced the oncoming nurse to the patient. The patient gestured grandly around the room and said, "Nurse's name. Meet all my friends." To an empty room. That could have been a joke about their lack of friends. In mood, LOL. Woman woke up from surgery and said to her husband, "David, that alarm clock has a nose and it's running. Wipe it." The very first time I was under, I was in 3rd grade and was relatively scared. What kept me brave was the promise of Burger King breakfast afterwards. It was an early morning procedure that required fasting and I rarely got fast food. They ended up running behind that day, so it was up in the air if I would wake up and get out in time to get my breakfast, which ended at 10. The first words out of my mouth were, "What time is it?" When my mom informed me it was already about 9:30, I tried to get out of bed and nearly ripped out my IV in the process. When she tried to tell me that we would be late and I could get it another day, I promptly burst into tears. Edit. I did get my Burger King a different day. Thank you all for your concern. This makes me so sad for you. Did you eventually get your Burger King breakfast? I was the patient. After coming out of surgery for a hernia at the age of about 15-16, my father helped me to the bathroom in the hospital. I was pretty fucked up still and said, "Boy, Dad, I was just so worried I was going to get an erection during the procedure." He laughed and made a slicing motion with his hand, implying the doctor would have cut my dick off, and I burst into tears and threw up on myself. LOL. I bet he promptly regretted that joke. I bet he was proud. Not many people have told a dad joke so dope the kid literally cried and vomited, shitting and farting because of a dad joke. I was the patient. But right before Christmas a couple of years ago, I had my gallbladder removed. In the recovery room as I was waking up, I became obsessed with singing the 12 Days of Christmas song. I kept asking the nurses what order the verses were in. As they were wheeling me out of the room, I heard a nurse belt out 5 golden rings, which was followed by everyone's laughter. A girl I worked with told the story of how she got grounded from age 15-18 because of anesthesia. She was having a colonoscopy, and as she was a minor her mother was in the room with her. After she was sedated, and as the technician started to insert the scope, she mumbled, "No, not again. Boyfriend's name. It hurt last time." Her mother was not amused. Ooh. Not medic but patient. I had appendix surgery after a preventive 2-day fasting. Water was okay and anesthesia hit me pretty hard. When I was told I had to use one of those plastic urinals or whatever because they said the abdominal effort could make me faint, I just said, "I ain't gonna poop on a plastic tupper. If I pass out in the toilet like a hero, then let it be." Wife got an epidural right before childbirth and said some funny things. Once the baby's head was in the birth canal, the nurses asked if she wanted to touch her baby, and she said that nobody is allowed to have sex with her daughter. LMAO, this reminds me of when I gave birth. The midwife said, "If you reach down now I'll be able to feel the baby." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Funnily enough I can feel her." My husband burst out laughing. Apparently the midwife's face was a picture but I was too busy pushing out a human to notice. He still giggles about it and our daughter's 5 now. It. OMG, I got an award. Thank you, kind Redditor. Edit 2. Wow, this blew up. Thanks everyone. I was similar. The midwife said she had the baby's head, which just means they can see it crowning. I told her to get on and pull it out then, and also called her a lazy bitch for not helping whilst I was doing all the work. The crazy thing was that midwife then came back 2 more times to deliver my other 2 babies, and each time before I got onto the med she reminded me I was not to laugh and I was not to call her a lazy bitch. I sat straight up in the bed, they tell me, and shouted I didn't ask for this. Then I turned to a nurse and pleaded, "Okay, mom." I always start to compliment everyone I see after waking up from anesthesia. It's super important to me to compliment them, it seems. You nurses are doing such a good job. I hope you know that. Such a great job. Wow. You're all so beautiful. Why is everyone so beautiful? Thank you for taking care of me. That's really nice of you. I love your eyes. They look kind and pretty. I am not fully there yet, but I still always react the same. I am scared and worried that they don't know how great they are. I have no filter when I wake up. Normally I am too shy to say everything I think about others, and a few minutes later I start to throw up. Every single time. I had gotten 4 wisdom teeth out in July, and I was under anesthesia for an hour. When I was done, I woke up in a chair and asked the nurse where I was. She said I was at the dentist and I said, "Still? Jesus Christ." And she thought that was funny. On the drive home, there was a turtle in the road. My mom stopped to let him pass and I got out and tried to catch him. I have a video of me laughing at the turtle. Oh god, I woke up sobbing. I was convinced that I was married to Cedric Diggory and he had just been killed by Voldemort. I'm cringing so hard just thinking about it. I was inconsolable. Cedric. Obligatory, not a doctor, but I was the patient. I had to get my wisdom teeth removed at the hospital because they were, for lack of a better term, fucked. When I woke up, the nurse was going through the routine to make sure I was not brain dead. She asks me my name by saying, "Who are you?" I respond with, "I'm a lesbian." My parents were in the room. They didn't know at the time. That was how I came out. Damn. You really came out of anesthesia swinging the other way. I laughed way too hard at that. Thank you, kind stranger. 18-year-old girl recognized the male anesthesiologist from Tinder last week and accused him multiple times of not showing up to their agreed date, while randomly falling half asleep in between. As we put her back in bed, she mumbled that she is not even mad, just generally disappointed in men and that she still thinks he's pretty. Yelling for his brother, then whispering loudly to him, "Check to see if I still have my d." I think they took my dick, then proceeded to flash the whole room. After being put under to have a wisdom tooth extracted, I told everyone for an hour that my balls were tingling. I mean, they were, and folks just needed to know because it was hilarious. At least, to me it was so funny. We had to stop by the grocery store on the way home and I think a few dozen people there heard about it. My poor wife. Dude, sometimes we just need to talk about our balls. No big deal. We've all been there. That tingling feeling is how I know Xylus is a traitor. Not a doctor, but my grandma was still loopy from surgery when they brought her lunch, including a roll with a little pat of butter. She looked at grandpa and said, "I hope they don't expect me to eat all that butter." I honored, but when my sister got her wisdom teeth out, she screamed in the car until we stopped and let her out, near our house, and she sprinted back to the house because she wanted to race the car. I need to go find that video. There is a video. Reddit needs to see that. Yesterday. Ditto. 65-year-old woman who had a wrist surgery. She was anxious, so they gave her a good whack of propofol, the milk of amnesia. Mid-surgery she was having the time of her life. In a thick Northern Irish accent she was like, "Did you just fill me up to me head with vodka? Gimme a wee bit more, boy. I'm loving this shit." Then she said the anesthetist looked like Freddie Mercury and started singing "Don't Stop Me Now." The anesthetist looked nothing like Freddie. My husband was given ketamine as a sedative for a surgery he was having, but it tissued, meaning the drug was in his body but being slowly absorbed by the tissues rather than direct into the bloodstream. The medics tried again. It happens again. By the fourth attempt it works. He has really shitty veins. Cos renal failure will do that. He has his surgery, but in the meantime the rest of the doses are working their way into his system. The surgery finishes, and he's wheeled back into the ambulatory care ward where I am waiting. He sees me and waves, yelling, "Beckett, Beckett, guess what? I'm on special K." The ward grinds to a halt for a second, and the staff are trying desperately not to start laughing. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, you aren't you." Bonus points for the gentleman 2 beds over who I overheard asking his anesthesiologist if he could have what my husband had, please. He was so high, and the staff came and explained why and apologized to me. It was all good though. It did him no harm. "Yeah, we just gave your husband 4 doses of ketamine. You'll be fine." I'm just saying, a hospital is probably the safest place to be administered 4 doses of ketamine. Anesthesiologist here. During recovery from general anesthesia, I called one of my patients by his full name in a loud voice. He opened his eyes, suddenly jumped upright and sit on the bed, and he said something. "Sir." "Yes sir." He was under military service at that time. Not a doctor, but I was told by my dentist that when he was prepping me to remove my wisdom teeth, I asked him why he became a dentist. I vaguely remember him telling me a story about how when he was a preteen he was at a local pool, running around when he slipped and smashed his chin on concrete and shattered some of his teeth. Ouch. He was amazed at how well they reconstructed his teeth that he decided to go into dentistry. Apparently. I then looked this man in the eyes and said, "Well, that's a stupid fucking reason to become a dentist. Sorry, Dr. J." Grimacing face. Nad, but I kept asking about puppies that I swear I heard barking. I just wanted to see the puppies and know why the puppies were there. I was so upset that no one else had heard puppies barking. When my brother was waking up after a surgery, my mother was there taking care of him, but he couldn't stop laughing. When he was finally able to squeeze out a few words, he said, "Mom. Ha ha ha. Mom, you're so ugly." Surgeon. Nurse. Why is the patient still unconscious and why is the mother holding her slipper? Fear the Chandler. Not me, but my boyfriend. He went under anesthesia because he had 4 fucked up teeth. He is an anxious patient when it comes to dentists, so I was allowed to be with him in the room till he was finally under. His last words before the anesthesia were, "I don't want to die," and luckily he didn't. It warmed my heart though, because he had 2 suicide attempts before I've known him, and I am glad he changed his mind on that. After the anesthesia he was just groggy, but on the way home in the car he saw everything double and always screamed at me, because he thought I would crash into another car. Wasn't said directly to us, but his wife relayed the message. Her husband thought that he was abducted by aliens and was probed. He came in altered and couldn't follow instructions. Altered due to wicked high ammonia. To bring down his ammonia we had to give him lactulose PR. So we gowned up with face masks, face shields, and white paper gowns. 2 each, in fact, just in case. Both of us administering are 6 feet 3 inches. So he recounted to his wife the next day about how he was in a bed on his side and 2 tall white aliens with plastic faces he couldn't really see were probing him. Admittedly this isn't under anesthesia, but it is a story of when a PT was altered and we died laughing, as did the wife, when we were told, "Enjoy." The reason his ammonia levels were so high is BC he had liver issues and it was well known documented. He was on meds to try to control it but his liver was failing if I recall correctly, so he had a spike of ammonia levels which caused the ANS. He was unable to follow directions to take oral meds BC he was altered, and also the best absorption for the lactulose med to get the ammonia down as quick as possible is in the backside. My brother had top surgery and woke up from being put under. My stepmom, whom I call Mom, recorded him talking about how Abe Lincoln was a great guy. She asked him how he knew and he replied with, "I knew him back in Nam." And that's the story of how my brother fought side by side with Abe Lincoln back in Vietnam. I walked past in a room. The patient inside saw me and called out, "Dude, you are, like, a burning eagle right now." I said, "Cool, man," and then his RN told me he was high on acid. Are they using different anesthesia these days? I don't recall saying anything at all and neither did anyone tell me I said anything while under or coming out of anesthesia. I did kind of get scared. The first and only time I had laughing gas, as a kid, and think the dentist was a Nazi, but didn't say anything. I couldn't have. It was in the middle of dental work. I think it depends on what else they have you on. Painkiller wise, etc. My wife's having surgery tomorrow and I'm not allowed in, thanks to COVID. I'm really bummed that I won't be there to hear her when she's under anesthesia. Won't you be able to see her after? Usually when the goofy happens. I didn't hear this directly but I was told about a guy that made a Futurama reference and told the doctor to tell his wife he said hello. Guy was single. Had a dementia patient tell me her favorite food was mouse. I was very torn between laughing and crying. Every time I wake up from anesthesia I ask the nurses for food. Then I complain that they are not allowed to feed me in recovery and that I was a good girl and didn't eat before surgery. There is usually a meal waiting for me by the time I get back to my room. Every time it feels like the best meal I've ever had. I apparently can't handle my anesthesia. The first time I woke up I asked the nurse if I was going to be able to fight by Monday. My wife properly translated that to can he teach his wrestling class. Before we went home, she wanted to drop off my prescriptions at CVS. She left me locked in the running car. After she dropped off the prescription, she turned around to find me in the CVS standing in the frozen dairy section holding German chocolate ice cream. I told her I needed it because my people made it. Car was still running with the passenger door left open. Just before I went under, I was a child and there were fish stickers on the ceiling. I said the fishies are moving. We were having a very intense conversation during the patient's procedure about fire pits pros, cons, likes, dislikes, lucks, budget. It just went on. Patient wakes up and says she was dreaming about fire pits. Vet tech here. Dogs and cats come out of anesthesia in an assortment of different ways. But this one husky I swear lifted his head and said, "Thank you," in that strange way that some dogs can actually sound human in their bark voice. The other tech and I just looked at each other and said, "Holy did he literally just say that?"